in the room, Gaurav Jashnani, excuse me if I mispronounced your name.
No problem. And I noted accommodations on the form, as I did last month. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for your time. I'll comment briefly on just a couple things. Regarding the accommodations policy, I didn't realize other people would be speaking about it as well. But Mayor Chiara, am I saying your name right? Yeah. And Member Gazy both disparaged people with disabilities last meeting, specifically me and one other speaker. The mayor is directly responsible, as given our structure of government, for the lack of funding and lack of adequate supports for disabled students. Now she had to show us that not only do our students not deserve basic legally mandated accommodations, but even those of us at public comment don't deserve accommodations. She refused to think during the meeting about ways she could support and fund our schools, which she voted against, but instead held on to her ableist, discriminatory comments for 3 hours to make them at the end of the public portion. I was appalled at both of you and call for both of you to apologize to both myself and Councillor Rothenberg for your vile, ableist comments about how we're not really disabled, we're not the correct type of disabled, and suggesting we are faking it and just wanted extra time. I also ask that the school committee formally consider censuring both members for their disparaging, discriminatory, ableist comments about people with disabilities that sounded straight out of the Trump administration's rhetoric. Finally, let me say I've heard a lot of talk about bullying and insulting demeanor since moving to this town 7 months ago, as well as accusations that people like me who call for more school funding are lying about what's happening in the schools. So I'll give it to you straight from the horse's mouth. As part of the rebuttal to my DESI complaint to the state about IEP noncompliance, I received material submitted by Matt Holloway, supervised by Superintendent Bonner. He left the recorder on after my January 31st IEP meeting. After the meeting had ended, this was then transcribed and submitted to the state and to me. For one thing, while Matt and others were talking, they insulted me, comparing me to one of their family members who is, like me, according to them, such a pain in the ass for standing up for their disabled kid. This is in writing sent to me and the state. They seem to have tried to look up my social media, one of them mentions. They call me one of those Save Our Schools people, concerningly indicating their prejudice toward my possible political affiliations during a meeting about services for my child. But most importantly, one of them, who seems to be Matt, I can't tell because they're all labeled with speaker numbers in the transcript, casually admits general and systematic non-compliance with IEPs as a norm in our school district. He says, or the speaker says, I do think that the reality of the situation is that we don't always, I mean we should, but we don't always give kids everything they should get on their IEP. This is a direct quote. And I think in some way, and this is not a good thing, but in some ways I do think it's kind of understood that sometimes there isn't coverage or sometimes there isn't staffing or whatever. Why isn't there staffing? But then there are some people, meaning me, who like this come from a different community. I moved from a different town. So he kind of doesn't get it. That's the end of the quote. And then finally they admit that they are preying on a lack of information to systematically underserve our students and families. Quote, we have so many families of kids who need so much more than we give them, and they don't know that they can come in and make a fuss. Because they don't know what their kids need, they don't get services. This is admitted by administrators in our schools on a recording, transcribed and sent to the state, which is also an indicator of potential competence, I think. This is how our administrators talk about us. This is clarity amidst all of the gaslighting and all of the dissemblance and dishonesty that I have seen since moving here. Administrators admitting systematic violations of state and federal disability law and then submitting it to the state. This is what we have in our schools right now. Is this what you as the school committee want us to have for our children? This is not what I want for my children. I don't think this is what you want for our children. You're starting to talk about the budget for next year today, I believe. This is what would happen. This is what would continue with level services. And my understanding is that if we have a 4% budget increase, it will mean further cuts. This is with level services. Administrators saying out loud, we don't give kids what they need. Everybody knows that. This guy's an entitled jerk because he thinks that he should get the services the IEP says. Everybody knows that we don't do that. What is this? This is what I discovered yesterday trying to write my DESI rebuttal. This makes me sick. I feel ill. I hope that you can feel a little bit of that, not as much as me, because it's really overwhelming to read that this is what my child is dealing with. And this is what all of our children are dealing with. Every single day, administrators who know what's happening and because of the lack of funding, can't do anything about it. And I want to be very clear, I don't blame these individuals. I think they're rude at times. But this is about funding. This is about not having the staff. They say that, right? Everybody knows we just don't have the staff. Yeah? I hope you understand what I'm saying. I'm trying to be as clear as possible. I'm a little overwhelmed. But I call on you to please think about this when you're thinking about the budget for next year. I call on the mayor to think about what it means to insult people like me with disabilities in this school committee meeting, and then insult our children by refusing to allow them the services that are legally mandated for them to be able to learn. Students like my child. Thank you very much.